what do you think it is reasonably, that we can actually do to better support, the American worker in the next 3.5 years?
Well, I think we can't continue to have policies that encourage companies actually to move their jobs overseas. I think we need to have a real debate and be focused on the reindustrialization of America. The fact is, there's twice as many people that work in government now than are in manufacturing. And that is a consequence of terrible policy that's been pushed by, sort of career level bureaucrats and a Democrat Party that has abandoned working people. I mean, you got to remember when I was growing up, and I'm a Gen Xer, right? The Democrats felt like they had the high ground with working people and they could cast Republicans as only caring about corporate America and the wealthy. That's just not true anymore.
Yeah.
I think from an economic perspective, certainly from a cultural perspective, you just look at a lot of these debates, the Democrats have totally lost their minds. And nothing could be more clear than the immigration issue. I mean, they completely opened up our border to 20 million people, unvetted in most cases, and they're perfectly fine with it. Like they actually the left wing radicals that were writing white papers a decade ago somehow found their way into the Oval Office with a president who was out to lunch effectively, or either that or was totally bought into this for legacy purposes. But no matter, you saw people stream in across the border with crime, with fentanyl. It affected communities. Communities were overrun with those problems. And when President Trump started talking about this immigration issue a decade ago, talk about the Overton window,
Yeah.
he changed the debate and he made the issue about sovereignty, about really a fight for our civilization, for a country. This is a country that's founded on really important ideas, but we're a nation and we're a people and we're not some, airport with, or a strip mall with an airport attached to it, right? Like this isn't just some economic zone. It's our home.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that frame of mind, the fight seems much more relevant and important. I just think about it where I grew up. Like my dad worked 7 days a week in the midnight shift. The guys that I grew up around playing baseball, their dads were factory workers, or they drove a truck, or they were cops, or they were firefighters. Really, the backbone of our communities. And I think if Republicans keep that in mind, that's who we're fighting for. We're gonna, it's good policy, but we're also going to keep winning and expanding this new coalition that President Trump sort of put together in the last election that allowed him to win the popular vote and sweep the battleground states. So again, I'm bullish on sort of where we're headed here, but you've got to have the courage, I think, to stand up and fight in the arena, because I'll tell you, one of the takeaways for me is, as it relates to foreign policy in particular, the neoliberals and the neoconservatives don't really disagree on a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it's what are the core national interests of the country? Pursue diplomacy first. If we have to engage, we should have a restrained foreign policy. But if we have to engage, it's with overwhelming force. And I think that's President Trump's stamp on foreign policy. We could talk more about it, but we've already seen recent examples where that's been very effective. And also, I think him being a strong president has created this ability for him to rebalance trade.
Yeah.
We've been ripped off for a long time, and I think these trade deals now are a part and parcel of a new way of thinking.
Yeah, I was at this, on the trade issue, I was at this, reindustrialized conference 2 weeks ago. It was very exciting
Yeah,
being, with a lot of these people who are very motivated in many cases to put millions and billions of dollars, uh, on the line to actually build things here in the United States, provide jobs, etcetera. What are you most excited about? I think it's pretty obvious that manufacturing in the modern day and age is not gonna be the same
right.
as it was 50 to 70 years ago. What excites you the most
Well,
about?
I think you look around, half our cars are built overseas. 80% of our pharmaceuticals are made overseas. 90% of our chips, high-end chips, are made overseas. It doesn't need to be that way. And I think we're at a time where we can question a lot of the assumptions that people have taken for granted. You don't need to have all these jobs go somewhere else. We can do the work here. And I think actually is in the advances in technology and sort of advanced manufacturing are going to make that more real and provide opportunities for real Americans to onshore those kind of jobs. And look, again, these trade deals were put in place decades ago. I can't actually believe it's taken this long for a president to take this on, but let's just take the last 30 years. We've been saddled with these deals that we've been ripped off. We don't have access to markets. we pay tariffs, or there are barriers in place that send our goods back or our products back. But President Trump has said we're not doing that anymore. And so, on Liberation Day, he makes this announcement, and he's methodically now gone through, whether it's with the EU or other countries, and said, we're going to have a renegotiation of this. And the American people are going to benefit from it. So, all these people who thought this was totally taboo, and the experts have gotten this wrong 1,000 times already. So, not only do we have more access to markets, and not only do we have fair trade deals, but also look at the investment that's happening. I mean, trillions of dollars. Mercedes Benz wants to build their stuff here. Nvidia wants to build their stuff here. I mean, all this manufacturing, because they made the decision like, you know what? It's actually a better deal for us to manufacture in the United States of America. And oh, by the way, we have 40% of all the consumers in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, all the consumer spending is here. So we've never had a president that's used that kind of leverage that's gone to say, oh, you want to have your products be able to sold to 40% of all the consumer spending that exists in the world? Well, guess what? We need to be treated fairly in your markets. I don't know. I don't really understand how that hasn't happened before, but President Trump is a different animal, and he's the sort of the singular political figure right now. But before he stepped onto that stage a decade ago, no one, there just wasn't a lot of discussion. So for me, I feel very much at home in this Republican Party. I joked at last year's convention that you had Hulk Hogan, Kid Rock, and normal people on the stage. This is my kind of party. And Hulk Hogan, of course, just passed away. But I think being a party of common sense and of normal people is a good thing for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's totally emblematic of who the president is, and by the way, the fact that he has proved all these, like, highly trained and educated economists, totally wrong,
Well, it speaks to, and I think this is important when you talk about experts, all these people. If you think about, if you zoom out here, for 100 years, we've been on this collision course that's finally happening. You had literally Woodrow Wilson, probably our worst president, who wasn't much good at anything growing up except creating systems and trying to control them, kind of set up this administrative state because he didn't actually think that people could get it right. He thought the Constitution didn't address the challenges of their time. And FDR then kind of supercharges it, right? So you have these massive agencies with people who aren't accountable to anybody, making up a bunch of rules and enforcing without Congress ever authorizing it, right? And so you have the rise of this kind of expert class. And now you have a president and an administration that says, you know what, where the power really resides? It doesn't reside with you, it resides with the people. So there's this huge disruption that's happening, and you couldn't, stage it any better or make the lines more clear than with USAID.
Yeah.
Here are people who, these aren't American interests. The Institute for Peace, it's got a great sounding name, but that's how you get to a place where you have sex change operations being paid for in Guatemala by US taxpayers. It's how you end up with Iraqi Sesame Street. It's how you end up with DEI trainings in Burma. This stuff nobody ever voted on. People despise that kind of waste of their taxpayer dollars. And we've got to rein that in. But the only way you're going to do it is if you've got the guts to stand up and say, this, we're not doing this anymore. And the Democrats are losing their minds because you have this strange nexus between USAID, their NGOs, that were doing all the stuff that the American people would never support. But it's what happens when you have this wandering foreign policy that has now existed for decades, this kind of Wilsonian utopian view that we can be everywhere at once all the time, and abuse of what soft power is supposed to be. And they were doing it so forever. And, when we were doing the rescissions package that I handled on the Senate floor, this was the first time we could kind of confront this. And we said, you know what? We're not going to spend $1 billion on Corporation for Public Broadcasting anymore. They're not a neutral arbiter of news. They're a partisan left-wing group that looks down on middle America. And if they want to survive on their own, God bless you, but you're not going to do it with taxpayer dollars anymore. And most of that, the remaining $8 billion in that rescissions package, was sort of realigning our priorities within what we do, what this relates to the State Department and what USAID had gone adrift for. So I'm really proud of that. I think it's just one step of saying we're going to actually take steps to correct this. We're not going to continue to go down this path anymore.
Yeah. I think you're totally right about that, and that the people are with the president on it. That being said, I think it is pretty obvious that there are a fair amount of Republican senators who are sort of ideologically opposed to the idea of tariffs. What is the general basis of their argument, behind the scenes, why they would not support something like this?
Well, I think this has just been sort of accepted dogma for so long
Oh,
that it's finally being challenged. I think at the heart of it, what President Trump is doing is using leverage that we have so that we stop getting ripped off by other countries. I think, the 10% that's out there is sort of like a kind of a Sam's Club membership fee. If you want to have access to the 40% of all the consumer spending in the world,
yeah,
there you are. And the revenue that it's raised so far is in the hundreds of billions of dollars so far,
yeah,
right? And that's projected. I mean, that is going to be trillions and trillions of dollars of revenue in the 10-year window. And you've not seen inflationary impacts there. You also, by the way, didn't see it in his first term when everybody else said this was, this is heresy. He was able to do it. We got a better deal with China than we had before. But the Chinese have openly admitted when then Joe Biden came in, they just didn't follow the rules because they didn't think Joe Biden was going to do anything about it.
yeah,
I think that's very different here with this president. So on a foreign policy front, you finally have sort of the school that I'm in, sort of American realism. You have a president who that's how he operates. It is what's in our interest, maximum leverage. He's got the respect of people around the world. Look at all these peace deals that are coming to the table that would have never come to the table with Anthony Blinken and Joe Biden. They didn't respect America in that way. And so basically, through peace, through strength and deterrence and understanding what America's real power is, but being restrained in doing it, Iran is a great example of this, right? Like there were a lot of people in this town that wanted further engagement in that region.
oh, yeah,
President Trump and JD Vance, that whole team showed a lot of restraint here by saying, we have a core national interest in that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, overwhelming force to obliterate their capabilities, and then pivot to peace.
yeah,
Not sending our boys and girls over there for an extended conflict or regime change or some idealistic view. You treat the world as it is, and you try to protect your interests. And but if you believe in scarcity and you don't think we can be everywhere all at once all the time, like this is the way.
yeah,
And I think it's been really instructive, and not just with how he handled that situation, but others we can talk about. But it's for me, this is sort of he's putting the case in front of the American people now. This is a different way of doing things than we're used to.
yeah.